Hi there guys, hopefully you're all doing well. Today we're on the fourth part of the Calibra restoration. If you are watching it and you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button because I would like to get to 40,000 subscribers before Christmas. A big wish, but I can ask it. Today we're going to be doing loads of boring work on it. We're going to be doing the brake pipes, we're going to be doing the exhaust, we're going to be doing the brakes, brake calipers, and a few other bits and bobs which need doing on it, as well as stripping out the interior and cleaning some of the carpets off. So hopefully you enjoy this one, and on to the next bit. Right, so we're up on the ramp now, and as you can see where they're leaking from. They're leaking from here somewhere, and it's also leaking from behind here. So it's quite awkward to change them because you can't get the parts for them anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this pipe about here, and then over here, and then stick a bit of rubber hose in. And then hopefully the same with this one, but it looks like this one could be leaking from behind here as well. So I'm going to have to try and cut it up there, which is going to be a little bit more awkward to get that down. So leave it with me and we'll get that done. This other side looks okay. I've cleaned it up and it's not leaking anymore. So I think it had just spread when it was leaking. This side had literally just rotted away and it was all loose. So that's why it was all peeing out of there and running across the edge of the pipe. So this side shouldn't be too bad to change. I just need to pull it out of the way so I can get something in to cut it, and then we can hopefully replace it with just a rubber hose and some Jubilee clips, because I do believe that that should be the lower pressure side as it's a thicker one. Right, we've fitted a pipe and I've gone all the way up to the top there. So now let's lower it down, put some fluid in, and see if it doesn't leak. Power steering pump is still a little bit noisy, but fingers crossed that will calm down once the pipe work warms up. And the exhaust front pipe has split all the way along there. Power steering pump, you can hear a little bit of noise coming from it, but it's been dry for several years, so fingers crossed with a little bit of lubrication and a bit of use it should quieten down a bit. So that's another job fix. Let's move on to the brakes now, but first of all let's not forget to put the cap back on. So we've got a brake hose which comes from the back of the brake caliper down there. It goes all around the suspension arm to a brake hose there. Just giving it a quick wire brush down now so I can see if I can get a spanner on the brake pipe. But as you can see, it's easier just to cut it and then get a socket on the end. Well, they've kind of rotted away a bit and the spanner's going to slip on those, so I think we just need to cut those off and then work with what we've got left. You'll have to bear with me because throughout the whole of this video you will get bad camera shots because of the nature of where I'm working. It's really difficult to get the camera into these hard to reach places. One brake pipe made up to a rough shape. Once it's all installed I can bend it to try and make it look a little bit neater. Just trying to pull out the brake hose securing clip now. You are better off getting replacements of these because they do end up rusting away. Right, we're now 2.5 pipes down. I'm not bothering to record any of this because it's really boring work, to be honest. It's just me feeding pipes to the car and making some connections for the ends of them. So join me again in a second when all 4 of them are done and we can get the brakes bled up. So here's an example of the 2 pipes fitted, threaded through the wheel arch with 2 new hoses fitted. And here you are just underneath the car. Unfortunately, the bleed nipples on the back of the rear calipers have disappeared and rusted away, so we need to order some new rear calipers. Unfortunately, the calipers are coming from Germany, so I've got quite a long wait for those, another week at least. So what I'm going to have to crack on now is with the welding. And this is where I'm going to start. I'm probably just going to show you one of the welds and then that's it. I'll just do the rest off camera. So to start with, we need to clean up the area and see how much of a hole we need to cut. So just using a grinder with a sandpaper disc on it, just getting around the edge of the hole and finding some decent metal. And once I've done that, I can get the cutting disc in and hopefully cut a nice little squared hole. What you can also do to make a neater line is mask it up so you can then cut along the masked line. But this is just a nice easy square hole, so it was relatively straightforward to do. Once you've got a hole, you've got to clean out all the crap from behind it, and if you look at the insulation on the left, that is inside the car. So you do need to go inside the car and move all the insulation out of the way. But what I also did was put a big metal plate on the other side of it, so any hot debris wouldn't get into the interior of the car. Now I'm just making a template out of some cardboard or some thin paper. And then once that's made, we can then make the metal patch, make sure it fits. It did have a little bend in it, so I did just bend it by hand just to make it fit that little bit better. And then once that's done, I did primer the other side of it as well, so it doesn't rust from the inside, but I will also treat it from the other side as well. And now just a few tack welds. If you notice, I am welding quite slowly because of the inside of the car being literally just the other side of this, and I didn't want to cause a fire by getting anything too hot. It was literally right underneath the pedal box, this was, so it was a little bit awkward to reach everything. So the welds are going to be a little bit crap, and they're not going to be pretty, and they're not going to be flat because I was taking my time while welding them. And I was taking my time so the metal could cool down in between welds, because normally you'll weld to a little bit of hot metal so it's still glowing just to get a good seal between the 2 bits of metal. But unfortunately you do have to do it a little cooler when it comes to places where you could set fire to things. Now on to grinding the welds flat. Of course I'm going to have to do this here because of how proud they were, but it will hide a multitude of sins and you can get the panel looking reasonably smooth, and then we can stick some seam sealer on it and then we can paint over it, making sure it's all weatherproof and doesn't rust again. Little bit of primer, and then I've masked around the area where I've welded so I can make the seam sealer look a lot neater, and then I can smooth the edges down with my finger once I remove the masking tape, as you can see now. Voila, doesn't it look perfect? Another coat of primer and then we'll paint over it black, a bit of lacquer and then stone chip. So I'm at that point now where it always happens with all builds. I am now waiting for parts to come to finish off certain jobs. I'm waiting for the rear calipers, I'm waiting for brake discs and brake pads, and I'm waiting for the front wishbones. I'm also waiting for some new lights for the rear end, the number plate lights, because they have decided to disintegrate when I took them out. I've glued this one back together thinking you wouldn't be able to get any more, but there's still loads missing on it. But I have managed to get some unfortunate LED ones, so at least they're going to do the job and it'll pass the MOT. So what other jobs can I get on with? Well, I can do the rest of the welding underneath, which is probably what I'm going to have to do. But in order to do that, I've got to take all the interior out. Don't really want to do it, but it's one of those jobs you've got to do. But the interior's got to be cleaned anyway. So maybe while it's out, I could pressure wash the carpet, see how well that cleans up. And then that will then have a couple of days to dry before I put it back in. And then we're coming to the end then, really. It's just once the last few parts have arrived, we can crack on and give it its first drive. So let's crack on with cleaning the floor up to start with and seeing how much welding we've got to do, and then we'll crack on with getting the interior out. So I've just quickly gone over the floor. There's still tons of rust there, but at least we can see what needs cutting out and what doesn't. So we've got one hole up here. I don't know whether or not to cut these out and weld these up. I've got to do a bit of a repair up there, but that shouldn't be too bad. The rest of this floor pan is actually okay. That's not a hole, that's just like a regular drainage hole. The front mount here is okay. I forgot to do that bit there, so I'll do that in a minute. And on the driver's side floor pan, it's pretty much the same story. I think these are going to really want welding up, but I'll have a think about it. One little hole here. And that is about it for this side. This bit at the very back, I'm going to have to take the bumper off to do that bit, so I'll just do that after. So on to removing the interior now. It wasn't a difficult one to remove. There was 4 bolts holding the seating with 1 electrical connection. The rear seats were held in with some pull tabs, and then you just threaded the seat belts through them to get them out. The hardest bit really was probably the centre console, because there was a few little hidden screws, but it was nothing dramatic. Just searching through the car, pulled the passenger seat up, and I found a Dina Carroll CD, which is probably from what, 93, 94, something like that. So it's been a while since I've seen one of these, let alone held one. Jesus, wow, the memories. Star Wars Happy Meal, what date was that from then? So this is like episode 1, so we're talking, yeah, early 2000s, late 90s. Now underneath here is soaking wet, so I'm probably going to replace this, or is it going to be easy enough to take it out? Should be. So what I ended up doing here, because it was all right up behind the dashboard, I've just sliced it off and I'm going to give it a few weeks to dry outside before the interior goes back in. Or worst case scenario is I can just get some more aftermarket stuff and pop it in. But to be honest, once it's dried out, it should be fine. I think the reason it leaked in was purely because of the door being left open while it was stood. So fingers crossed it should be nice and dry once it's had some time to dry out. So now all the seats and carpet are out and the centre console, it's time to remove everything in the boot. If you can see those little cupboards there, they were actually filled with mice droppings and bedding and things like that that they've nicked out the car and shoved into those little cupboards to make a nice little home. I think it's what's left of a mouse, so that might be what stunk so much in the boot. Oh, one thing I will tell you is the rear seats were a proper faff to get out. They've got two sort of two-sided bolts, not eight-sided, two-sided bolts. So you had to get the spanner in just the right position to rotate it half a turn before you had to move the spanner around to get it out. And it wasn't fun at all. I'm not looking forward to putting them back in. Other awkward bit was these door cards. They're relatively straightforward, but as you see, as I pulled them out, I've left two of the fixing points in place, so I'll have to glue those back in when it comes to refitting it. So now everything's removed. I'm removing some of this sealant because it's like bitumen type stuff and it melts when you weld it. And when it melts, it means you don't get a very good bond with your metal when you have a bit of bonding melted into it. So here's all the holes now. I think I've got 7 holes to weld up fully. And the carpet is also out, and that is rather disgusting. So I'll be very happy to get the pressure washer on this lot. I am now completely stuck for working on the body of the Calibra at the minute because I'm waiting for some seam sealer to dry. So I'm going to crack on doing the interior, and as you just saw, it is in quite a bad state. So fingers crossed, some heavy duty cleaner and a pressure washer should be able to bring them up to looking like new. Go guys, what I had to do was give the interior a little bit of a clean because it was that filthy, and it came up quite nice. I've also started seam sealing the underside, and then I'll get on to priming it and painting it. I am having one of those days today. I shouldn't really be working on the Calibra today, but things have gone pear-shaped for a few customers' cars, so I'm having to order stuff rather than repairing them. One of them being this Alpha 147. was to replace that part of the arch and like half the sill, and then it's turned out that all the inner sill has gone halfway along as well. So I thought, okay, I've told the customer, let's just cut it out and see how far we need to go. And it seems as though we need to go the whole way across, and we need to take the front bumper off, take the front wing off, take the doors off, repair all the inner sill, make sure the thick bit of the sill that jacks on is strong enough, so I'll probably have to replace part of that as well. So it's turned in from what was 2-3 days of work into probably a good amount of work extra. So I'm waiting for the customers to get back to me on repairing that. So at the minute I've down tools on it, and I'm going to be working on the Calibra because I've now got the brakes here and all the brake pads and discs, and I've got the exhaust as well. So hopefully I can have some full content for this episode. And I know we're about halfway through now, so I just want to get to like the 30-minute mark and then call it a day on the episode. So now I've found the primer, which I've been looking for ages. I can finish the welding off underneath. Well, I finished the welding, I just need to finish. I'm so lapsy-daisical today, it's doing my nutting. What I need to do is primer and paint the underside and also stone chip it, and then I'm going to move on to the brakes. So first of all, let's just stick a little bit of primer on the seam sealer. Now it's been a few days since I actually, well, it's been nearly a week since I filmed this last part, so I'm forgetting what I've done, where I'm at, so forgive the continuity of this episode, but I have cleaned the carpets all up, but this is as good as they're going to get. They are stained from, looks like where the mats have been on them. They're a darn sight cleaner than they were. The back is perfectly fine. So my first thought was to dye them black, and then my second thought was, isn't that insert on the carpet cream as well? It is, so I may just end up putting them back in as they are and just put the mats back over them, so it kind of hides it a little bit. Because there's no point in me spending millions of dollars on finding some better carpets when all I want to do, I want to get it clean and MOT passable, because I'm not going to make any money. I'm going to lose on this by the time I finish with it, but yeah, there's no point in me doing anything with the carpets, so I'm just going to put them back in. Unless you have some carpets I can replace them with that you're willing to donate to the project. So let me know in an email if you do have some you want to donate. We want to change the brake disc and the pads and also the caliper, because the brilled nipples have snapped off. So let's start by removing the caliper, and then we'll see. In fact, no, we're going to see if that'll come undone first. I have come prepared with a ratchet and a screwdriver extension, because I doubt very much I would get enough purchase to undo it otherwise. I can see me having to drill this out, to be honest. Oh no, it's come undone. I am very impressed that that has came undone. It was sitting in such worse conditions for so long, and it's still all there. Vauxhall used good quality screws. So now I'd imagine it's the back of the caliper where I can feel 2 bolts, so let's get those undone. And there are 2 bolts on the back of the caliper, and we'll see if they will come undone. I don't like how much slips on those bolts. Let's try this one first. Okay, that one's come undone. Oh, and that one's coming done as well. Those 2 bolts are out now. You've also got the ABS carrier as well on the back of there. So when you put it back together, don't forget to put that back in. So let's lower it down now and get the caliper off. Will it come off like this? It might do. Do you want to undo that brake pipe beforehand? A couple of turns, and then we can get that off fully. Once it is off. Now, judging by how thick this disc is, I'm going to say there's the handbrake behind here with a pair of shoes on them. I can't see anywhere to wind it off, so hopefully it will just come off with a little bit of chasing round. Okay, there was a bit of an adjuster there, so that's fine. I can do that next. I've managed to pull that out, but I can sort that out. Wheel bearings, it's a little noisy, but it could just be crap in it from not being used for so long. So we're not changing the wheel bearing. So we need, that moves around a fair old chunk. They both come out, yay, that's fine. We can deal with that, we can deal with that. You've got holes there for them. One back in. Of course, the second one's going to be a lot more troublesome. Oh, okay, no, relatively straightforward. As it's a new disc, I've wound off the adjuster a little bit and I can adjust it if needed later on, but that seems to have slid on there quite nicely. This is going easier than I thought it would. Something's going to happen. I need to down tools and buy another part for, and it's going to be stuck on the ramp again. But no, so far it's catching a little bit, but it's still relatively free. We'll see how that goes when we use the handbrake a few times and we tighten and loosen the handbrake off. Let's just check for brake pressure. Yeah, we've got some. Obviously that was just its first bleed. It probably won't bleed in 2-3 times before we get all the air out of the system. But as long as we've done that first one, that is fine. And I'm going to crack on with the front ones now. And before anybody says it, yes, I was a little bit naughty and I let the brake caliper hang for about 2 minutes while I put the disc on. Floor is all finished now. It's been given a good coat of stone chips. It's all looking lovely and clean, so I can finally get the brake pipes and fuel pipes back into position now, and then fit the exhaust. And I thought it'd be a lot easier to remove the exhaust and then take the O2 sensor out on the bench where you've got a lot more room. And it did seem to pay off because it came out. I was expecting to have to order one of these. But this is the state of the exhaust. It's literally split all the way along and the end has just rotted away. There we go, lovely and quiet again now. So there we go, we have got a lot of the boring jobs out the way now. We've done the welding, we've got the power steering working, we've got the brakes working. We have also done the exhaust and probably loads of other things that I've done off camera. So we're going to call the video the end here. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you can like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.